If you own a Chevy and you've ever left it sitting in the driveway for a couple of weeks without driving it, this video is going to save you from a very expensive mistake. Most people think that letting a car sit is harmless. It's just parked. Nothing's happening to it. But the truth is, the moment your Chevy stops moving, a slow and invisible chain of damage begins. And by the time you notice it, you're already looking at hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars in repairs. We're going to go through exactly what happens to your Chevy the longer it sits, starting from day one and going all the way to the point of no return. And more importantly, we're going to tell you exactly what to do to prevent every single one of these problems. Let's start with something that happens faster than most people expect. The battery. Your Chevy's battery is not just sitting there doing nothing when the car is parked. Modern Chevrolets have what's called parasitic draw. That means even when the ignition is off, the vehicle is constantly pulling a small amount of power. It's feeding the alarm system, the clock, the memory settings in your ECU, the keyless entry module, and a dozen other things. Under normal driving conditions, your alternator recharges the battery every time you drive. But when the car sits, the battery slowly bleeds out with nothing to refill it. Within about 5 to 7 days in cold weather, or 10 to 14 days in moderate conditions, your battery voltage can drop low enough that the car struggles to start. And here's the part people don't realize. It's not just about whether the car starts or not. When a lead-acid battery drops below a certain voltage threshold and stays there, a process called sulfation begins. Sulfur crystals start forming on the lead plates inside the battery. Once that happens, the battery never fully recovers its original capacity. Even if you jump-start the car and it seems fine, that battery is now permanently weaker than it was before. You've shortened its life, sometimes by a year or more, just from one extended sit. The fix is simple. If your Chevy is going to sit for more than a week, connect a battery tender or trickle charger. Not a full charger, a tender. It puts out just enough current to keep the battery at full charge without overcharging it. They cost around $20 to $40, and they will save you a $150 battery replacement. That's one of the best investments you can make as a Chevy owner. Now let's talk about something that's quietly destroying one of the most important systems on your truck or SUV while it just sits there looking fine from the outside. The brakes. Your brake rotors are made of iron. Iron and moisture are a terrible combination. Every morning, when temperatures drop and humidity rises, a thin layer of rust forms on the surface of your rotors. Under normal driving, this isn't a problem. The brake pads wipe the rotors clean within the first few stops of your drive. But when the car sits for extended periods, that surface rust builds up layer by layer. After 2 weeks, you can have a visible ring of rust around the entire rotor surface. When you finally drive it and apply the brakes, a couple of things happen. First, you hear that grinding or scraping sound. Most of the time that goes away after a few stops as the pads scrub the rust off. But if the rust has built up thick enough, it doesn't just scrape off cleanly. It can actually score the rotor surface, leaving grooves and ridges. And once a rotor is scored, it doesn't just go back to smooth. Your braking performance is compromised, and you're now looking at a rotor replacement. The second thing that can happen is even worse. If the car has been sitting long enough, the rust can actually bond the brake pads to the rotors. You go to drive it, and the brakes are literally seized. In mild cases, the car brakes free on its own when you accelerate. In severe cases, you're looking at torn brake pads and damaged rotors that need immediate replacement. The best thing you can do if you know the car is going to sit is to park it in a garage if at all possible. Covered storage dramatically reduces moisture exposure. If you have to park outside, try to move the car at least once a week. Even just driving it around the block is enough to wipe those rotors clean and prevent bonding. Now here's one that most Chevy owners never think about until it's too late. The tires. Tires are not solid rubber. They're a complex mix of rubber compounds, steel belts, and fabric cords. And all of that works together when the tire is rotating and flexing under the weight of the vehicle. When a tire sits stationary under a heavy vehicle for an extended period, the rubber in the contact patch, the part touching the ground, deforms. It develops what's called a flat spot. In many cases, flat spots are temporary. You drive the car, the tires warm up, and after a few miles the flat spot works itself out. You'll feel a thumping or vibration at first, but it goes away. However, if the car has been sitting for several weeks, especially in cold weather where rubber becomes less flexible, flat spots can become permanent. The tire is now out of round. It will thump at highway speeds forever. The only fix is a new tire. There's also the issue of tire pressure. Tires naturally lose about 1 to 2 psi per month just through normal permeation through the rubber. But in cold weather, pressure drops even faster. An underinflated tire sitting under a heavy load accelerates sidewall cracking and internal stress on the belts. You might not see it from the outside, but the structure of the tire is being compromised. Before you drive a Chevy that's been sitting, always check tire pressure first. And if you're storing the vehicle, consider putting it on jack stands to take the weight off the tires completely. It sounds like overkill until you're buying 4 new tires because you didn't. Let's move on to something that happens deep inside the engine, while everything looks completely normal on the surface. Oil degradation and dry starts. Fresh engine oil is a liquid film that coats every metal surface inside your engine. Bearings, cylinder walls, camshafts, lifters, everything. That film is what prevents metal-on-metal contact when the engine fires. But when a car sits, that oil film slowly drains off those surfaces and settles into the oil pan at the bottom of the engine. The longer it sits, the more exposed those metal surfaces become. When you start a car that's been sitting for 2 or more weeks, there is a brief period, sometimes just a few seconds, sometimes longer in a neglected engine, where the oil pump is pushing oil back up through the system, but it hasn't reached all the critical components yet. That is called a dry start. And in those few seconds, metal is grinding against metal with nothing in between. You can't hear it. You can't feel it. But it's happening. Over time, repeated dry starts cause measurable wear on engine bearings and other internal components. This is one of the main reasons why engines that have been stored for extended periods often don't last as long as engines that were driven regularly. The damage is cumulative and invisible until the engine starts knocking or losing oil pressure. If your Chevy has been sitting for more than 2 weeks, don't just turn the key and rev it up. Start it and let it idle for at least 2 to 3 minutes before driving it. Give the oil system time to fully pressurize and coat everything before you put the engine under load. And if it's been sitting for more than a month, seriously consider an oil change before you drive it, even if the oil isn't due. Old oil that has been sitting loses its protective additives and can carry condensation and contaminants that you don't want circulating through your engine. Now let's talk about fuel. And this one catches a lot of people off guard. Modern gasoline is not the same as it was 20 or 30 years ago. Today's fuel contains ethanol, and ethanol is hygroscopic, which means it actively absorbs moisture from the air. As your fuel sits in the tank, it's pulling in water vapor, especially if the tank isn't completely full and there's airspace above the fuel. Over weeks, that moisture accumulates. You can end up with water in your fuel system, and water does not combust. It causes misfires, rough idle, hesitation, and in serious cases it can cause corrosion inside the fuel tank and fuel lines. Beyond the moisture issue, gasoline itself begins to degrade around 30 days. The lighter, more volatile compounds in the fuel start to evaporate, and the fuel becomes stale. Stale fuel doesn't burn as efficiently. You'll notice it as a rough start, poor idle, or reduced power. If the car has been sitting for 3 months or more, that fuel may have broken down enough to leave sticky varnish deposits in the fuel injectors and fuel system. Injector cleaning, and in bad cases injector replacement, is not cheap. The solution here is 2 things. Keep the tank as full as possible during storage. A full tank means less air, less moisture absorption, and less fuel surface area exposed to evaporation. And if you know the car is going to sit for more than 30 days, use a fuel stabilizer. It's a cheap additive you pour into a full tank that prevents the degradation process. Run the engine for a few minutes after adding it, so it circulates through the entire fuel system. Here's one that nobody thinks about until they walk up to their stored Chevy and find a surprise waiting for them: rodents and pests. A parked vehicle is an incredibly attractive home for mice, rats, squirrels, and other small animals. It's warm from residual engine heat, it's sheltered from the elements, and it's undisturbed. They get in through gaps in the firewall, through the HVAC intake, through any opening they can find. And once they're in, they build nests in the air filter box, behind the dashboard, inside the cabin air filter housing, and under the hood. That's annoying enough on its own, but the real problem is what they chew. Rodents chew wiring. Modern Chevy wiring harnesses, especially newer models, use soy-based insulation coatings that rodents find genuinely attractive. A mouse can destroy thousands of dollars worth of wiring in a single night. Chewed wires cause shorts, trigger check engine lights, disable sensors, and in extreme cases can cause electrical fires. Wiring harness repairs on modern vehicles are among the most labor-intensive and expensive repairs you can face. If your Chevy is going to sit, place rodent deterrents around and inside the vehicle. Peppermint oil-soaked cotton balls placed under the hood and inside the cabin are a surprisingly effective natural deterrent. Steel wool stuffed into any obvious openings also helps. And check under the hood before every startup if the car has been sitting. A nest sitting on top of the exhaust manifold or against the engine block is a fire waiting to happen the moment that engine gets hot. Let's talk about one more system that quietly suffers during extended storage: the cooling system. Coolant doesn't last forever. Over time, and especially when sitting stagnant, coolant breaks down and becomes acidic. Acidic coolant does not protect your engine. It corrodes it. It attacks aluminum components, gaskets, hoses, and the inside of the radiator. If your Chevy has been sitting with old coolant in it, by the time you drive it, you may already have internal corrosion beginning in the cooling passages. On top of that, rubber hoses and seals in the cooling system dry out during storage. You may not see a leak when the car is cold and sitting, but the moment you drive it and the system pressurizes under heat, an old dried out hose can split. Now you're overheating on the side of the road. Before driving a stored Chevy, squeeze the hoses. They should feel firm and flexible. If they feel stiff, brittle, or spongy, they need to be replaced before you drive it anywhere. And check when the coolant was last changed. Most Chevrolets call for a coolant flush every 5 years or 150,000 miles. But if the car has been sitting for an extended period, don't wait for that interval. Change it. So here's the bottom line. Your Chevy is not designed to sit. Every system in that vehicle, from the battery to the brakes to the engine to the fuel, is engineered to work through regular use. The moment it stops moving, the clock starts ticking. 2 weeks is genuinely the threshold where you start running real risk of multiple systems being affected at the same time. If you have to store your Chevy, do it right. Get a battery tender on it. Keep the tank full with a fuel stabilizer in it. Move it once a week if you can. Park it covered if possible. Check the tires. Put down rodent deterrents. These are 15-minute tasks that protect a vehicle worth tens of thousands of dollars. And if you just went out and looked at your Chevy sitting in the driveway and realized it's been longer than 2 weeks since you drove it, don't panic. Go through the checklist. Check the battery voltage. Check the tire pressure. Look under the hood for anything unusual. And take it for a proper drive, not just around the block, but at least 20 minutes at highway speed to get everything up to operating temperature. Charge the battery, and work those brakes clean. If this video helped you, hit the like button. It helps more Chevy owners find this before they make an expensive mistake. And if you want to know the single biggest thing you can do to make your Chevy last past 200,000 miles, watch the next video. It's not what most people expect.